Well, the news this evening was that a 70-year-old street cleaner died from injuries that he sustained yesterday, Wednesday, during clashes in Shengshui, which is probably the last town that you pass through before you reach the Chinese border in Shenzhen. The man it's not believed to have been an aggression. He just happened to get caught up in clashes between protesters and local residents there, and it seems that a brick hit him on the head. And this is clearly a sign of how violent the protests are getting. Protesters are routinely digging up bricks, paving bricks from the street to use them for various purposes, building barricades and also laying them on the ground to impede the onrush of police vehicles. And this person in particular probably was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But everyone who goes out to protest nowadays, particularly journalists and also many protesters as well, will wear crash helmets or hard hats to prevent this sort of thing. And of course, there was a similar problem as well with tear gas canisters. A 15-year-old boy in another suburban town is currently in a coma because he was hit with a tear gas canister a couple of days ago too.
Are we surprised? Are Hong Kongers surprised, Oliver, at just how more violent it's become this week?
I wouldn't say they're particularly surprised. They are probably a little bit despairing at this point. There's a little bit of a resigned feeling to it. Hong Kongers are not necessarily in favour of the more violent escalation on the part of protesters, but they do understand why it has happened, because the government has really sat on its hands for the last 5 months and has continued to do so, and has ruled out any attempt at dialogue, even with Hong Kong's democratic members of the Legislative Council, who have more or less been snubbed constantly by Carrie Lam's government. So there is a little bit of an amazement that it has happened, but Hong Kong has not been completely immune to this in its history as well. More than 50 people died in riots in 1967 in the city, so it's not exactly something that the city has never encountered before.
Hi, this is Joey. I'm the external vice president of the City University of Hong Kong Students' Union.
Thanks for being with us. Your reaction to the news of this street cleaner dying from wounds sustained on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, I feel very sorry about that, but that also shows a very common incident in Hong Kong, that especially for the recent days, there have been more and more clashes between some local residents, especially for those pro-government supporters and the protesters. And for the incident happened yesterday in Shengshui, that was the pro-government supporters throwing bricks at the black shirt protesters, which we find it very concerning because there were injuries on both sides.
You heard our correspondent there say that one of the big problems right now, as we have this ratcheting up of the clashes with barricades, with pitched battles on campuses, is that there's no dialogue going on. Are you in favor of dialogue?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody in Hong Kong could be representing all the protesters in Hong Kong to have a dialogue with the government, because this is a leaderless movement and we do not have a very obvious leader that can be representing all of us to talk to the government and to reach consensus. And another reason why I don't think a dialogue could be possible at this moment is because the government isn't showing any kind of sincerity towards the protesters. For example, the mass arrest still goes on. The police brutality is getting more and more serious every day. They're even shooting rubber bullets, shooting tear gas into university campuses. We find it very, very concerning. And we do not feel like the government is trying to have a very sincere dialogue with the protesters to solve the problems. So I believe nobody in Hong Kong is trying to have a dialogue with the government.
Nobody's trying to have a dialogue. So how do we stop it from escalating further? How do you prevent more deaths?
Well, I mean, it is not only the protesters that is not willing to talk to the government. I believe Carrie Lam is also not willing to talk to the protesters, because like few days ago when she has met with the executive officer of the European Union in Hong Kong, she said that there is no room for dialogue with the rioters. So we believe that it is also the government that is not willing to talk to us. So, and in terms of to prevent more deaths from happening, I believe it is a must for the government to stop police brutality and stop the escalation of police force, because like we find it very concerning that the police force had been shooting more and more tear gas, rubber bullets into university campuses in those residential areas, especially targeting elderly students and even kids. And I believe to prevent more deaths, it is very important for the Hong Kong government to call upon the police force to stop these kinds of police brutality.
Late on Thursday, China's President Xi Jinping warned that 5 months and counting of protests in Hong Kong is endangering the one country, two systems statute that we have right now. What's your reaction?
Well, first of all, I think we have to make it clear that the one who is encroaching one country, two system is the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government itself. It is because their very brutal encroachment to our core values in Hong Kong that makes one country and two system no longer work in Hong Kong. And I believe it is not a good way to preserve one country and two system by using police brutality, by suppressing protests violently. And ever since June, we have made our demand very clear, because at the beginning of June, the only demand among protesters is about the withdrawal of the extradition bill. But then the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government isn't willing to withdraw the bill. And that makes the protests go on. And when we have made our 5 demands very clear, the Hong Kong government is also not giving any response to us, that they are rejecting all of our demands. And especially for yesterday, Carrie Lam has made herself very clear in a press conference that she will not be responding to any of our demands. And I believe it is the Hong Kong government as well as the Chinese government that is getting the situation worse.
What's the mood right now on campus? What was it like today?
All of the students in campus are very, very nervous, because a few days ago, the police stormed into the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And yesterday, they had been shooting tear gas into my university's residence area at 7:15 in the morning without giving any warnings and without a proper reason. And it is actually an unspoken rule among the Hong Kong society that we never storm into university campuses. I mean, it is not only about the police, but other stakeholders in the society also respect the rule. And it is very worrying that the police are starting to target campuses, that we find that not only city university, not only Chinese universities are being targeted, they're also targeting the University of Hong Kong, Baptist University, and the Polytechnic University. That puts students in danger. And we find it very concerning that it clearly shows the government's intention to arrest more and more students, to arrest more of the younger generations, because I believe they are very clear that the younger generations are very important stakeholders who are this pro-democracy movement. And that really hinders the freedom of academia and also the freedom of speech, because university campuses are supposed to be a place where we enjoy the freedom of speech and expression.
Joey Su, one final question. At what point does this leaderless movement have to start to appoint, if not leaders, at least spokespeople?
Well, I do not believe we need a spokesperson or a leader throughout the whole movement, because we had been continuing the movement for over 5 months. We do not have any leaders, we do not have any leading groups, but then Hong Kongers are exercising our creativity, using our own ways to sustain the movement by organizing different rallies, protests, and campaigns. And I believe even without a leader, Hong Kongers are able to sustain the movement and to reach our final goal. And especially when our common demand are very clear that we are fighting for the 5 demand, I believe we do not need a leader to lead the whole movement.
Joey Su, many thanks for speaking with us. Very late hour in Hong Kong.
Thank you very much.
Joey Su of the City University of Hong Kong's Student Union.